Dubro Suspicion Files.
Okay, let's just jump right in. There's this phrase that gets used a lot in official documents, no defense significance. And what that often really means is we have absolutely no idea what this is, and if we admitted it, our entire strategic posture would be compromised.
It's a containment phrase, a way to shut down inquiry.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we are completely discarding the tired old image of a grainy, distant UFO sighting. We are going deep, really deep, into what is arguably the most forensically solid security breach of the entire Cold War.
The Rendlesham Forest incident, December 1980.
And our mission here is, I think, surgical. We're not here to tell spooky stories. We want to strip away all the folklore that's built up over 40 years.
Right. We need to analyze this through the eyes of the people who were there, the U.S. military professionals. You've got this whole stack of sources in front of you, classified documents, the Halt memo, which we'll get into.
Oh, yeah, radar logs, detailed witness testimony. This isn't just a story. It's a paper trail.
It's a paper trail of a catastrophic collision between known military protocol, specifically nuclear security protocol, and, well, physics that, frankly, we still don't get.
That's the absolute core of it, isn't it? This wasn't some flying saucer buzzing a farmhouse. This was an unknown object intruding into a high-value, nuclear-armed NATO base.
A catastrophic failure of defense at the most strategic level imaginable. And to really get why the official response was immediate denial and a cover-up, you have to understand the world in December 1980. You have to set the stage.
Okay, so let's do that. The setting. It's not some backwater base. We're in Suffolk, England. RAF Bentwaters and its twin, RAF Woodbridge.
And you have to understand, these bases were the tip of the spear for NATO. They housed the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing. At the time, that was the largest USAF fighter wing in all of Europe.
This was a critical piece on the chessboard, staring right across the Iron Curtain at the Soviet bloc.
And the global atmosphere. I mean, 1980 was unbelievably tense. The détente of the 70s was completely shattered.
Right. You have the Soviets bogged down in Afghanistan.
And even more pressing for Europe, you had the Solidarity movement kicking off in Poland. The fear in NATO command was that Moscow was about to roll the tanks into Central Europe to crush it.
So every U.S. base in Europe was on a hair trigger. Maximum readiness.
Maximum anxiety. They were genuinely anticipating the possibility of a conventional war escalating into a nuclear exchange.
Which brings us to the secret at Bentwaters, the thing that amplified that anxiety tenfold. Publicly, the base housed A-10 Thunderbolts.
The tank busters. Warthogs, designed to chew up Soviet armored columns.
But our sources all confirm that beneath the surface, there was a much more sensitive and completely unacknowledged mission.
Yes. Bentwaters was home to a massive, strategically vital stockpile of tactical nuclear weapons, specifically B-61 gravity bombs.
And these weren't sitting in a silo somewhere. These were Theer weapons designed to be loaded onto fighter bombers and used on the European battlefield.
They were stored in heavily reinforced underground bunkers, weapons storage areas, WSAs.
And here's where it gets really complex politically. These bombs were on British soil,
which created this incredibly sensitive command and control issue. Officially, it was often called a dual-key arrangement.
Meaning both the U.S. and the U.K. would have to authorize their use.
In theory. But in practice, there were often U.S.-exclusive command arrangements for tactical control. The point is, the UK government needed plausible deniability for its own domestic politics.
They couldn't just admit to having a massive American nuclear arsenal on their soil.
So the secrecy around the WSA at Bentwaters was maybe the most intense in the entire United Kingdom. It was a black site for all intents and purposes.
So let's bring it back to that night, when lights are suddenly spotted maneuvering near the perimeter fence, right next to the most sensitive asset on the base.
The security police, their mindset isn't aliens.
Not all.
Their minds go to one place.
Yeah.
Soviet intrusion. They're thinking Spetsnaz, highly trained special forces sent to sabotage the nuclear stockpile before a war kicks off.
Or maybe some kind of advanced, low-observable drone technology, a new kind of Soviet surveillance craft probing their defenses.
They were expecting the enemy, a human enemy. And that's so crucial for this whole deep dive because it speaks to the quality of the witnesses.
These weren't civilians making up stories. These were trained, professional security personnel guarding nukes at the height of the Cold War. Everything they saw was filtered through the lens of a lethal, real-world threat.
And with that level of tension as the backdrop, the moment they saw that light, it wasn't a curiosity. It was a high-priority security alert.
Let's walk through it then. Chronologically, It's the early hours of December 26th, Boxing Day. 3 in the morning.
Right. You've got Airman First Class John Burroughs and Staff Sergeant Bud Steffens on patrol near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge. They're just doing their standard perimeter checks.
And they see it. A bright light descending, apparently crashing into the Rendlesham Forest, which is this dense pine plantation right on the edge of the base.
And here's the key detail that proves their professional mindset.
Yeah.
Their first thought, their immediate radio call, wasn't UFO.
It was crashed aircraft.
Exactly. They thought a civilian plane or maybe a helicopter had gone down.
Yeah.
So the initial response is grounded entirely in conventional military procedure. It's a rescue and recovery operation.
The shift commander, a Lieutenant Buren, gives the green light, authorizes an investigation.
And he sends in a three-man team. This is where we meet the key players. Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston, who was a senior security supervisor.
And Burroughs, who saw it first, and another airman, 𝐏𝐿𝐃𝐂𝐀𝐒𝐓.
And they go in, equipped for a crash site. They're expecting wreckage, maybe survivors, jet fuel.
But as they push deeper into the forest, the environment itself starts screaming at them that this is not a normal situation.
The first thing to go is their communications. Their radios, their lifeline back to base command, just filled with static.
Just dead.
Or dropping in and out. Peniston specifically noted it seemed to be a localized field. An intense electromagnetic field was just blanketing the area where the object was. This is a detail you hear over and over in close encounter reports.
The phenomenon is generating so much energy, it's just wiping out the EM spectrum.
And then there was this psychological shift, something researchers call the Oz factor.
To feeling that you've stepped out of normal reality.
Yeah. The forest, which should have been full of nocturnal animal sounds, went completely unnaturally silent. But, and get this, farm animals in the fields nearby, cows and horses, they were going absolutely frantic.
So something was affecting them physiologically? A sound below our hearing, maybe?
Could be infrasound or some other frequency, but it was a clear physiological stressor.
Yeah.
So you've got electronic failure, you've got this bizarre environmental distortion. They knew they were walking into something far stranger than a crashed plane.
And when they finally got to the clearing, that plane crash idea just evaporated.
Completely.
Yeah.
Because resting on the forest floor in a small clearing was a structured physical craft.
This is the moment. The Peniston encounter.
Right. Peniston, as the senior NCO on site, takes the lead. He approaches it. He's trying to commit every detail to memory for his report. He describes a triangular craft. Small. About 2 to 3 meters high, maybe 3 meters across at the base.
Manufactured. Undeniably manufactured.
How? The surface. His description's just fascinating. He said it was smooth, opaque, like black glass or obsidian, but it felt metallic.
No rivets, no seams.
No fasteners, no exhaust ports, nothing. It looked, in his words, monolithically formed, as if it was cast from a single, seamless piece of material.
And then he doesn't, you have to ask why. Why would you approach it? Why would you touch it? It seems like such a breach of protocol.
I think the sheer overwhelming absurdity of the situation just short-circuits your training. He later said he felt compelled to document it, even by touching it. So he walks up, circles it, feels this intense static electricity in the air.
The hair on his arm standing up.
Exactly. And then he touches the hull. And he said it was warm. On a freezing, cold, damp English December night, this thing was warm to the touch. It was an active, energetic object.
But the detail that really pushes this into high strangeness, the detail that's impossible to explain away, were the glyphs.
The glyphs. Yeah. Peniston saw a series of symbols running along the side of the craft, about 3 inches high. He drew them later from memory.
And they're not letters, not from any alphabet we know. They're pictograms.
They look like a structured, symbolic language. And this is a huge deal because it provides this incredible link to other major cases, like the Lonnie Zamora incident in Socorro, New Mexico back in '64.
Where a police officer reported seeing similar, unique symbols on a craft.
It's cross-corroboration of a very specific, very strange detail across decades and continents.
So how did it end? Phase 1.
The object. It just initiated a silent descent. No noise, no rotors, no jets, no visible propulsion. It just lifted off.
Maneuvered through the dense tree canopy without touching a branch.
And then it accelerated vertically. Peniston said it was instantaneous. It just vanished in the blink of an eye.
That's a demonstration of physics that we don't have. Total mastery over inertia.
For the security guys on the ground, the threat assessment just went from Soviet tech to unknown physics. And the implications of that for NATO air defense, well, they were terrifying. Something had landed inside their fence, defied the laws of motion, and left without anyone being able to do a thing about it.
And this is where the incident becomes more than just a story, because it left behind hard physical evidence. This is the part of the deep dive where we move from witness testimony into forensic science.
Exactly. Unlike a light in the sky, this thing left footprints. The next morning, December 26th, investigators were all over that site.
And the first thing they found were the indentations in the ground.
3 of them, in the soft, sandy, pine needle-covered forest floor. And they weren't random. They were arranged in a perfect equilateral triangle.
And the measurements were specific. Our sources say they were about 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter.
Now, for something to press down into that soft ground with that much force in 3 distinct points suggests a significant weight being supported by some kind of landing gear.
And this lets us deal with one of the most persistent skeptical explanations head-on, the rabbit scraping theory.
I know it sounds almost comical. The idea that 3 rabbits all decided to dig holes in a perfect geometric shape, all to the same depth and diameter.
It's absurd. Plus, investigators noted there were no tracks animal or vehicle leading to or from the site. The pattern was just there, clean and precise.
But that wasn't the real smoking gun. The thing that elevates Rendlesham into a category of its own is the radiation.
Right. The base's disaster preparedness officer came out with professional equipment.
An ANPDR-27 survey meter. It's a military-grade Geiger counter, standard issue for detecting ionizing radiation.
And the data they got was startling. It's right there in the Halt memo. The site was radioactive.
The peak reading, right in the center of that triangle of indentations, was 0.1 millirentgens per hour.
Now, let's put that in context for you, because skeptics always say, oh, 0.1 is very low. You get more on a plane.
But context is everything.
Everything. This is a sandy pine forest in rural England. The natural background radiation there is incredibly low, maybe 0.01, 0.02 millirh.
So a reading of 0.1, concentrated in that one small spot, is a 5 to 10 times increase above the normal background level. It's a clear, anomalous energy signature directly linked to the object's presence.
And the distribution of that radiation tells a story too, doesn't it?
It does. The readings were highest in the center of the triangle and at the 3 points of the indentations. It fell off as you moved away from the landing site. That's consistent with energy being emitted from 3 distinct sources.
Like landing pads.
Exactly. And even more compelling, they took readings from the trees surrounding the clearing, and they found elevated radiation on the tree bark, but only on the sides of the trees facing the landing site.
A directional signature, as if the craft emitted a burst of energy downwards as it landed or hovered.
So what you have is a geometrically precise landing trace, soil compression, and a localized directional radiation anomaly, all measured with professional military equipment. For the commanders at the base, the conclusion was inescapable. Something real and something highly advanced had landed inside their perimeter.
As incredible as that first night was, this story was far from over, because 2 nights later, it came back.
And this time, it wasn't just the security patrols who dealt with it. This is when it escalated to a full-blown, command-level crisis.
The night of December 28th, the deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, is at a party, an awards function.
And he gets called aside. The security police tell him, "Sir, it is back."
Now, Halt's mindset here is so important. He was a nuts and bolts by-the-book officer. He was deeply skeptical of the first report. He thought his men had been spooked, maybe misidentified something.
His whole intention in going out there was to debunk it, to find a rational explanation, restore order, and basically tell his guys to get a grip.
He was going out there to prove them wrong.
Absolutely. He brought a team, a photographer, disaster preparedness guys. He was planning to close the book on this. But he also brought one other thing.
The microcassette recorder.
And that tape, the Halt tape, changes everything. It's this raw 18-minute audio artifact that captures, in real time, a senior military officer going from cool-headed skeptic to, well, to a baffled witness of the impossible.
If you listen to it, he starts out so procedural. He's recording the facts, the names of the men with him, the location of the indentations from the first night. He's checking the radiation again.
You can hear him on the tape. We're getting a spike. It's jumping. He's just documenting.
But then the tone shifts completely because they see it.
He describes a red, sun-like light moving through the trees, pulsating, moving in these sharp, erratic, non-aerodynamic ways.
And you get those famous lines from the tape. It looks like an eye. It's winking at us.
He says it was dripping what looked like glowing particles, like molten metal. His voice. You can hear the discipline, but there's a definite strain there. He's trying to make sense of what he's seeing.
And then comes the climax of the tape. the moment of direct confrontation.
The object moves right over their heads and just stops. And Halt, his voice is tight, but he's still recording. It's right directly overhead. It sends down a beam of light, down near my feet.
A targeted beam of light, aimed directly at the deputy base commander. This isn't passive observation anymore. This is interaction. It's provocative.
But what happened next is what turned this from a bizarre incident into a full-blown strategic crisis. Because Halt and other witnesses later stated they saw that object and others shining laser-like beams directly into the weapons storage area.
The WSA, the nuclear bunkers.
They were actively probing the nuclear arsenal.
This has direct parallels to other incidents, doesn't it? The 1967 Malmstrom Air Force Base case.
It's the same pattern.
Yeah.
UAPs showing up at nuclear sites and interacting with the hardware. At Malmstrom, Minuteman missiles went offline. At Bentwaters, an unknown intelligence was actively targeting the B-61 bomb bunkers with directed energy.
For NATO command, the implication is just dire. This is a catastrophic failure of defense. An unknown technology is flying into their most secure area, demonstrating it can target their nuclear weapons at will, and there's nothing they can do to stop it.
And that is why they had to cover it up. You cannot admit to your primary adversary, the Soviet Union, that your nuclear deterrent is completely vulnerable to an unknown technology you don't understand and can't defend against.
So the story they told the public had to be different, but behind the scenes they had more than just eyewitnesses. They had electronic data.
Right. And this is where we can corroborate the story with radar. We have testimony from a guy named Mal Skura. He was a radar operator at RAF Neatishead, a major air defense station about 50 miles away.
And he confirmed it. He was tracking an unknown target over the Rendlesham area on both nights.
And the flight characteristics he described are just physically impossible. The object was moving at thousands of miles per hour.
And then stopping instantly, on a dime.
And making perfect right-angle turns. You have to understand the physics of that. For a normal aircraft to do that at that speed, the G-forces would be in the hundreds. It would tear the plane apart and instantly kill any pilot.
So you're talking about a propulsion system that somehow negates inertia. It's controlling gravity itself.
It has to be. Skura also said the object would just vanish from his scope and then reappear miles away almost instantly. So either it was moving faster than the radar could track, or it was using some kind of active cloaking technology.
So they have the radar data, the proof. What happened to it?
This is where the cover-up kicks into high gear. The standard procedure at these bases was to keep radar tapes for 30 days for review.
A standard protocol.
But that's not what happened here. Shortly after the incident, our sources say men in dark suits showed up at Neatishead, probably USAF intelligence or UK MOD specialists.
And they confiscated the tapes.
Confiscated the original radar tapes covering those specific nights. The tapes have never been seen since. That specific, non-procedural seizure of data is the best evidence we have that those tapes showed something of immense defense significance.
Which directly contradicts the official story.
It demolishes it. Which brings us to the Halt memo itself. Halt writes up his official report, submits it in January 1981. It's factual, detailed, no speculation, just the facts.
And it gets leaked eventually through the Freedom of Information Act.
And when it does, the UK Ministry of Defense issues its official response. And this is that key phrase again. They state the incident was of no defense significance.
Which, as you said, is just a legal firewall. It's a way to avoid having to investigate further, to avoid briefing Parliament.
But think about it. An unknown object intrudes on a nuclear base, leaves radiation, and is tracked on military radar performing impossible maneuvers. How is that not of defense significance? It's the very definition of it.
And we know that behind the scenes, they were panicking.
Oh, absolutely. The commander-in-chief of all U.S. Air Forces in Europe, a four-star general named Charles Gabriel, reportedly flew to Bentwaters for a personal briefing. The whole thing was handed over to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, the AFOSI.
This was not being treated like a misidentified lighthouse. The highest levels of command were involved from the very beginning.
And to really understand why this case is so solid, you have to tackle the skeptical theories that have been pushed for decades to explain it away.
Okay, let's do it. The big one, the one you always hear, is the Orford Ness Lighthouse.
Right. The theory is that these highly trained guards just got confused by the beam from a lighthouse 5 miles away shining through the trees.
But the rebuttal is just common sense, isn't it? These guys saw that lighthouse every single night they were on duty. It was a known landmark. To suggest they all collectively mistook its regular 5-second flash for a landed, structured, metallic craft
Implies a level of incompetence that would have gotten them fired immediately. They wouldn't be fit to guard a nuclear weapon?
Plus, the witnesses were clear. They saw the lighthouse beam, and they saw the object. They were two separate things. And as you said, a lighthouse beam can't fly over your head and shine a laser at your feet.
It just falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. Then there's the other theory, the SAS prank theory.
That the British Special Forces were messing with the Americans.
Again, strategically, it's just inconceivable. You're in the middle of the Cold War's highest tension point. You're going to risk a friendly fire incident, a NATO-on-NATO firefight, by pranking a nuclear-armed base? No commander would ever authorize that.
And a prank can't explain the evidence. You can't fake the radiation readings with flares and balloons. You can't fake the max speed radar returns.
It doesn't hold water.
And finally, people mention the Apollo bolide, a bright meteor that was seen that night.
Which might explain the very first sighting of a light falling from the sky.
It might, but a meteor is over in seconds. It doesn't land, sit on the ground for 45 minutes, interact with people, and then return 2 nights later for a multi-hour encore performance. So when you dismantle the counter-arguments, you're left with the core evidence. And then there's the human cost, the legacy of the event that can't be denied.
And this is maybe the most powerful piece of the whole story, the case of John Burroughs.
The airman who was there on the first night.
Years later, Burroughs develops very serious health problems. Congestive heart failure, tissue damage. His doctor said his symptoms were consistent with someone who'd been exposed to radiation.
So he files a claim with the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs. He argues his injuries were sustained in the line of duty at Rendlesham.
And for years, the USAF blocked him. They classified his medical records from 1980, citing national security, so the VA couldn't verify his claim.
They were actively obstructing him.
Until 2015. After a long fight, with help from people like Senator John McCain's office, Burroughs finally won. The VA granted him full medical disability.
And this is the critical part. They granted it for injuries sustained in the line of duty at Rendlesham, with the released record citing exposure to UAP radiation as the cause.
That is a de facto admission by the U.S. government. They legally recognized and compensated a serviceman for physical harm caused by this phenomenon. The same phenomenon they officially claimed had no defense significance.
That legal precedent, it just cuts through all the debate. It's a government agency acknowledging the reality of the event.
So if we pull all these threads together, we have to ask, why did this story get out? The Cold War was full of secrets. Why did Rendlesham break through the wall of silence?
It seems like it was just the sheer weight of the evidence. Too many witnesses, too much physical proof.
Over 40 military personnel were direct witnesses. And you had the Halt tape. That tape became this viral piece of evidence that it just couldn't deny. It was a real-time recording of their own deputy base commander confirming the whole thing. The lie just couldn't hold.
And looking at the object's behavior, it doesn't seem random or accidental. It seems purposeful.
It really does. It lands. It lets people approach and touch it. Then it comes back and specifically probes the nuclear weapons depot. This feels less like a crash and more like a deliberate test.
A test of our defenses, our response time, our technology.
Which feeds right into that bigger pattern we talked about, the nuclear attractor theory. This phenomenon, whatever it is, seems intensely interested in our nuclear capabilities. Los Alamos, Malmstrom, Bentwaters. It shows up at our most sensitive sites.
Which suggests a surveillance agenda. It's monitoring humanity's capacity for self-destruction.
At the end of the day, Rendlesham is a gold standard for a reason. You have the highest quality witnesses trained nuclear security personnel. You have the quantity of corroborating data, radar, radiation, physical traces, and you have the authenticated audio from a senior officer.
It all points in one direction. A structured craft of unknown origin using physics beyond our understanding operated with complete impunity inside one of NATO's most important bases.
Strategically, it revealed a terrifying vulnerability in Western air defense. And politically, the cover-up showed how a massive bureaucracy would rather lie than admit it was confronted by something it couldn't explain or control.
It forces you to accept that our control over our own airspace, our own technology, might be far more fragile than we like to believe.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to end on. If we have a documented case from 1980 where a senior U.S. military officer concluded that an advanced, unknown craft could penetrate a nuclear base at will.
What else did they know back then? At the absolute peak of the Cold War, what other incidents, what other data were being collected and hidden away that we, even now, decades later, are still not being told about?
That's the question that lingers long after you've examined all the evidence. What else is in those classified files?